Namaste nerds, this is Navana, the Budget Pub Stomper, and today we're going to be talking about Squall SeeD Mercenary. Now, I have no idea about anything about Final Fantasy. I know that I like this commander a lot. This is like this is the coolest Orzhov commander that I've seen in a long time. I mean, Ketramos might have been more powerful, and especially in budget could be just kind of oppressive, but I think this guy has something really interesting going for it. I don't think it's exactly obvious, or at least it wasn't obvious to me when one of my guys in the Discord pitched this to me. Ignicio said I should build this as a Stax deck. Now, you may know, if you know my videos, if you know me, not much of a Stax guy. And I don't really like the play style. I don't like playing with or against Stax all that much, although it's starting to grow on me a little bit in both directions. I don't mind playing against it so much anymore. Yeah, playing with it. I like building the decks. That's what I found, is that I actually think it's interesting to build a good Stax deck. I think there's some kind of just natural fundamental or almost fundamental problems with building a Stax deck, and I think in budget CDH or CDH, there are fundamental-ish problems in both of those quasi formats or portions of segments of the format. And they're not exactly the same, but they have some things in common. So I guess like the primary problem when you're trying to play a Stax deck in a competitive pod, a lot of times what you're going to do is you're going to end up king making, because you're going to have a bunch of Stax effects and they're going to end up slowing everybody down except for the one person who's able to ignore your Stax effects, and then they're going to beat you. That's more on the budget end of the spectrum. In the CDH end of the spectrum, when you're grinding the game down to a halt, a lot of times what you're doing is you're enabling whichever opponent has the best grind plan. Like if you've got a bunch of players and you've got like 2 turbo players and one guy that's on like Rhystic Study, Value Engines, the deck, who's like casting Rhystic Study and cloning the Rhystic Studies and so on. And they've got like a T&K, like a Timna and Crom blue farm deck that's drawing bundles and bundles. If you're putting down Stax pieces and you're not able to outgrind the most value-oriented deck in your pod, a lot of times what you're doing is you're just giving the game to the player that is able to do that. Or in like $100 or sub-hundo or hundo budget competitive, if you're in a budget pod, a lot of times what your Stax deck will end up doing is handing the game to whatever opponent is playing the most fair deck. But what I've actually seen in practice more recently is everybody really seems to be playing unfair decks now. So you're not going to very often sit down in a hundo pod against like Krinko and 2 actually decent decks and put a bunch of Stax pieces down that the Krinko player is able to totally ignore and then just get beaten to death by fucking 1/1 goblins, right? That doesn't happen so much. So the other thing is, so we've got the fact that fair decks tend to not give a shit about you and your Stax, and then we've got the fact that grindier decks than you are just going to outgrind you when you slow the game down, and they're eventually going to get to a point where they're able to remove whatever Stax pieces that you have in play that are slowing exactly them down, and then they're just going to win the game when they have just bundles and buckets of mana and cards. But I actually think Squall SeeD Mercenary, if the deck is built properly, is going to be pretty damn hard to outgrind in the late game, at least on a budget. And the way that I've built the deck here, I think, and the other thing is when it was first pitched to me, I read the card wrong. So full disclosure, the first thing I saw was I thought this guy recurred one creature every turn. I thought, man, that's just nowhere close to good enough. Then I reread it and saw that it actually recurs 2 creatures every turn. I'm like, okay, well, we're getting somewhere. That's closer. But now that I've actually read the freaking card, which I'm about to do for you, this is Squall SeeD Mercenary, 4 mana, 2 in Orzhov, 3/4. It has Rough Divide. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike until end of turn. That applies to the commander itself, which is easy to miss, but don't miss that because that's pretty important. Then it says, whenever Squall deals combat damage to a player, return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That does not say once per turn. That says every time it deals combat damage, and when it attacks alone, it has double strike, so that means it's going to hit twice. So you're going to get the double strike. You're going to get to recur 2 things, and it's not just creatures. It's any non-land. No, it's not any non-land permanent. It's any permanent. So if you have like fetch lands or budget fetch lands, it's a thing you could do. I didn't go that route, but you could do. But at $100, I don't think you should do. But you could. You could do. Don't do. So Squall is a 4-mana 3/4 value engine. That's what he is. If built around just a little bit. So this deck, I think, if we just take a look at the creature package, I'm going to go into the main win line straight away because I came up with it myself. I didn't come up with a win line, but the assembler, the way that it's put together, I figured out on my own, and I'm pretty proud of it. And I think it was, if I hadn't figured out this Buried Alive line, I don't think that I'd be presenting this deck to you today. So let's get on. Let's just take a real quick look at some of the pieces. So you can see this is going to be a hard deck at $100 to outvalue. Because somehow we've got room for Archavist of Ohgma. We've got room for just all kinds of value engines. Dark Confidant. Braids, Arisen Nightmare. Probably the best engine in the deck. Dauthi Voidwalker, which when you can cast it every turn is pretty freaking good. Lurrus of the Dream Den. Lotho. We've got, the pieces that go along with that, but not only can the commander recur 2 pieces per turn, but our deck is able to fit all of these, like I said, Archivist, Braids, Dark Confidant, Lurrus and Lotho and Dauthi Voidwalker. So this is going to be producing a tremendous amount of value. So I think that if we do get into the late game, which is the game plan, because we've got like really good Stax pieces, when we go into the late game, because we've played our Archon of Emeria that your opponents can't win through, because we've played our Accursed Marauder every turn for 4 turns. Accursed Marauder, Dauthi Voidwalker, we've got Fleshbag Marauder, Plaguecrafter, because we've been able to Skyclave Apparition, sacrifice it to Warren Soul Trader, attack, recur it, cast it again, along with our Fleshbag Marauder. And then at the end of the turn, does Braids work at the end of the turn? Yeah, at the end of the turn, we're going to sacrifice one of our enchantments. And since nobody has an enchantment, I need to refresh this. That Dispeller's Capsule came out. That was in the deck to blow up my own pieces. I mean, obviously, it can blow up other people's pieces too. Anyway, so if we're going to have more value engines than almost any deck at $100 is going to have, which is pretty impressive when you think about it from just for Orzhov. And these are pieces that the deck looks expensive, right? This does not look like a $100 deck. You sit down in a pod and you go like, turn whatever. You sit down in a pod and you start dropping Lothos and Dauthi Voidwalkers and Dark Confidants. People are going to question your budget. They're going to say, hold on, how did you have enough money for Archivist and Dauthi and Braids? And the simple truth is just a lot of these cards have gotten reprints. And some of them have just become less popular in CDH, which was their main spot, like Dauthi here. Lotho somehow is still holding at $5. I don't expect that to be the case forever. I think this is like top 3 cards that came out of Lord of the Rings, and that set was freaking jacked. And I think it's like Lotho, the One Ring, Lotho, and Orcish Bowmasters. I think those are the 3 best pieces that came out of the set. And one of them is a rare, and it's a $5 rare. This is a really, really good piece. So anyway, let's talk about the win con. I want to talk about, there's 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how exactly you look at it, ways to win the game. But the best way to win the game is going to be to have Buried Alive. And if you don't have Buried Alive, some combination of Unmarked Grave, Final Parting, Lively Dirge, Collective Brutality, drawing the cards naturally. You're going to be able to assemble the main combo. Or you can just cast one of your tutors. Maybe you cast Diabolic Intent, sacrificing a piece that you want to recur anyway. to use this as a better demonic tutor in this deck, and you're going to find your Buried Alive, you're going to cast your Buried Alive, or maybe you just cast your, transmute your Dimir Machinations into Buried Alive, and then you cast your Buried Alive, or maybe you just draw Buried Alive, because you're drawing a bunch of cards off of Braids, Dark Confidant, and Archavist of Ohgma. So you get to your Buried Alive, you cast it. I think a lot of people aren't going to bother to try to counterspell the Buried Alive, but they really should. They ought to, because it's going to be a lot easier to deal with it there on the stack than stop me from using my commander to dig these pieces out every single turn. So the way this is going to play out is once you cast Buried Alive with your commander in play, if you go to combat and you hit somebody with Double Strike, you're going to win the game. You're going to at least threaten a win. You're going to put a win attempt on the stack, and really on the stack using your commander's ability, not like casting more spells. We're done casting spells. As soon as we've got our commander in play without Summoning Sickness and we have resolved Buried Alive, we go to combat, we whack somebody for Double Strike 3/3. So that's 3 and 3, and we're going to have a win attempt right then and there. And the win is going to be this. When we cast Buried Alive, I'm going to move this microphone. I'm not sure if you guys are hearing me very well. Let's see if that's any better. So when we Bury Alive, the main cards, and there's other variations on this, but the kind of top-notch thing, the thing to remember, the first thing to do, Warren Soul Trader, Forsaken Miner, and doesn't really matter, let's say Blood Artist. So Blood Artist, Warren Soul Trader, and Forsaken Miner go into the bin with your Buried Alive. You go, and people probably aren't going to be too worried about that. They're going to be waiting for how you're actually going to win the game. But that is how you're going to win the game. Now you're going to go to combat, and as long as you have an open lane or you can make one with your lots of removal, we've got Vanishing Verse and Fracture and Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. We've got recurable things like Executioner's Capsule and Portable Hole and Grasp of Fate and Aura of Sight. Well, that's not creature removal. Touch the Spirit Realm, Static Prison, Seal of Doom. We're going to be able to murk things. We're going to be able to force our way through in combat. Failing all of that, we do have a set of Thieves' Tools, which the same guy that talked me into this commander talked me into Thieves' Tools, so I put them in the deck. It's 2 cents. How bad could it be? So Thieves' Tools just makes our guy unblockable, and it's 2 mana, then 2 to equip, but then it also produces a treasure on ETB, and sometimes we'll be recurring this, so we'll get a little extra value off of that. But mainly it just equips and makes our guy unblockable. Never mind all of that. Get back to, we've got our Warren Soul Trader, Forsaken Miner, and Blood Artist all in the graveyard. We attack with our commander, and we hit somebody for Double Strike, bang for 3, bang for 3. The 2 pieces that we are going to recur from our graveyard are going to be Warren Soul Trader, and it has to be exactly this. It has to be Warren Soul Trader and Blood Artist, or whatever our Blood Artist effect is. So we get the Warren back, we get the Blood Artist in play, we have the Forsaken Miner in the graveyard, and now we just need any creature to sacrifice, and we'll be able to start an infinite loop that'll murder the table. And even if we don't have another creature in play, we can go ahead and sacrifice our commander at this point because we're about to win the game. So, Warren Soul Trader says, pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, create a treasure token. Note that it's a zombie. That'll be important for another line. Okay, so we can sacrifice another creature to make a treasure token. Blood Artist says that whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Note that says target player, so that is committing a crime for the Forsaken Miner. The Forsaken Miner can't block, but we don't give a shit. It's 1 mana, 2/2. It says whenever you commit a crime, like pinging somebody with a Blood Artist, pay 1 black mana. If you do, return Forsaken Miner from your graveyard to the battlefield. So when you Blood Artist somebody, you ping them. That commits a crime. When you sacrifice any creature, let's just say we don't have any other board state. All we had was like, we got our commander in place somehow, and then we cast even just Dark Ritual into Buried Alive. We have nothing else in play. We've got like a land or two in play. We've got Blood Artist in the bin, Warren Soul Trader in the bin, and Forsaken Miner in the bin. We put them all there off of Buried Alive. We recur Warren Soul Trader with our first attack, or with our first punch from our double strike. Blood Artist with the second. That part doesn't matter. I mean, you can do those in either order, as long as you've got Blood Artist and Warren Soul Trader. Even if you have no other creature in play now, you can sacrifice your commander to the Warren Soul Trader to make a treasure. And when you sacrifice your commander, that's a creature dying. So the Blood Artist is going to allow you to ping target opponent. Pinging target opponent is committing a crime. So the Forsaken Miner is going to allow you to pay the black mana by sacrificing your treasure to put the Forsaken Miner back into play. From that point forward, you can sacrifice the Forsaken Miner to the Warren Soul Trader, making a treasure, pinging an opponent, gaining a life, committing a crime, allowing you to sacrifice a treasure to make black mana, to pay the black mana, to play the Forsaken Miner, or put the Forsaken Miner back into play. And so here we've got an infinite loop where we're just going to sacrifice Forsaken Miner over and over again to the Warren Soul Trader, pinging out the table with our Blood Artist, and where we would normally run out of life if we tried to do this to the whole table, because we have to pay 1 life for every time we get a treasure off of the Warren Soul Trader. The Blood Artist is going to be gaining us a life every time we ping somebody. So we are in an infinite loop where we just win the game. We burn everybody out. GG's. So that is just simply 1 card. So it turns Buried Alive into a 1-card combo with cards that you want to play in the deck anyway. You can just assemble this off of, well, all the draw engines. You know, you're drawing cards off of all these things we discussed. Like you've got your Braids out, and you notice that nobody has an enchantment in play. Or maybe one player does, but you destroy it with, or you exile it with your Vanishing Verse. Now, nobody could possibly take you up on your offer of sacrificing an enchantment. So you've got a Seal of Cleansing in play. You sacrifice that to Braids. Now, all of your opponents either have to sacrifice an enchantment, which we established they can't do, or if they don't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. So you're going to draw 3 cards for that every turn. Even if you're just sacrificing creatures, which a lot of times you'll just do that because you've got creatures that actively want to be sacrificed, or at least don't mind being sacrificed. So maybe you've got, well, it doesn't matter. We've got Archon of Emeria. We sacrifice it, and we make all of our opponents the deal. We sacrifice it to Braids, and now all of our opponents can either sacrifice a creature, or they take 2 damage and you draw a card off of each of them. Sometimes one of them will sacrifice a creature and you'll draw only 2 cards, but now you've killed a creature and drawn 2 cards, and they won't be able to keep that up forever. And you will be able to keep that up forever because you've got a commander that allows you to recur 2 things every turn. Also, you've got value engines in the deck that are going to keep you more wealthy than your opponents when it comes to having cardboard in play, like Lurrus. Lurrus will allow you to cast a thing every turn. Skyclave Apparition is a thing that actively wants to die, right? Like, you could cast your Skyclave to exile one of your opponent's non-land, non-token permanents with mana value 4 or less. So maybe you cast your Skyclave Apparition, and this is an exile effect, and they don't get the thing back. That's something people read wrong a lot. But when you cast your Skyclave and you you murder somebody's Kennen with your Skyclave Apparition. It says when Skyclave Apparition ETBs, exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent you don't control with mana 4 or less. Then it says when Skyclave Apparition leaves the battlefield, and now a lot of minds are going to jump ahead and think, well, they get it back when it leaves, but that's not what happens. If this thing leaves the battlefield, the guy doesn't get his Kinnan back. He gets a token that's an XX, Blue Illusion, is it? Yeah, Blue Illusion creature token, where X is the mana value of the exiled card. So instead of them getting their Kinnan back, they just get a 2/2 nothing creature. So you cast your Skyclave, you murder somebody's Kinnan, and then at the end of your turn, you will happily sacrifice the Skyclave Apparition to Braids. Now, each opponent has to sacrifice a creature, and if they don't, you get to draw a card. So that goes for each opponent. So let's just say nobody wants to sacrifice a creature, then they don't, but they each take 2 damage, and you draw 3 cards. And I think a lot of times, well, I've played against this, and what I would say that on average it's drawn 2.5 cards per turn. A lot of times what will happen is in the very early going against Braids, the opponents will try to make a deal, and they'll all try to sacrifice something to stop the card advantage. But eventually somebody's going to break that deal, and then everybody's going to break the deal. It's kind of like a Mystic Remora effect, right? So a lot of times you're going to draw 1, 2, or 3 cards off of Braids, and then usually once you start drawing 3 cards a turn off Braids, you are going to continue to draw 3 cards a turn off Braids. Now in this example, we sacrificed our Skyclave. So now in our next turn, when we bop somebody twice with our commander, one of the things that we'll bring back is going to be the Skyclave Apparition. Now we get to exile another thing, and it's a thing, just any non-land permanent with mana value 4 or less gets exiled with Skyclave. So we're happy to sacrifice this guy to Braids. But even aside from that, we just naturally have draw engines like Archivist and, well, the things that I've already talked about. You get the point. We've got draw engines, and mana engines, and value engines. Dauthi Voidwalker every turn is frickin' gross. Accursed Marauder, causing your opponents to each sacrifice a non-token creature every turn. Doing that every turn is nasty. And if you pair that up with Braids and some sack fodder, and you've got lots of sack fodder, things with ETBs, things like Mindstone where we can just sacrifice an artifact and then recur it. And even if we don't have to sacrifice it again, we can sacrifice it to draw a card. So it's sort of in the deck. Yes, as mana ramp, we do have a 4-mana commander, but also as a late game value engine with our commander. So we've got pieces that are actively meant to be sacrificed, and lots of ways to sacrifice them for value. So I think that in a lot of pods, we are going to win the attrition game. That's really the point. So we've got all these value engines. We've got a really kick-ass win line. And we've got a really sick removal package. Our removal suite is, let's stick with win conditions. So what's the next win condition? So if we are not casting Buried Alive, or maybe instead of casting Buried Alive, we have drawn one of our Blood Artist effects, and we have a tutor, like maybe we've got, what is the 2-man? I can never remember, and it's something to do with memory. Shred Memory. Okay, so maybe we shred memory to find our Blood Artist. And then we use our Diabolic Intent. So we've got our Blood Artist. We use our Diabolic Intent, sacrificing a creature that we'd prefer to be sacrificed. We sacrifice a creature to find our Warren Soul Trader. We cast our Warren Soul Trader. We cast our Blood Artist. And then we use Unmarked Grave or Unmarked Grave in this example. To put either Forsaken Miner, or maybe we just naturally draw into the other version of Forsaken Miner, which is Gravecrawler. So we drew the Gravecrawler, we tutored for the Warren Soul Trader, and we tutored the Blood Artist directly into the graveyard. We cast our Warren Soul Trader. We have our Blood Artist in the graveyard. We cast our Forsaken Miner. We go to combat with our commander, we recur the Blood Artist, and we're in that same loop where we're going to win the game. Forsaken Miner can be substituted for Gravecrawler. Gravecrawler says you may cast this card. Now this would be you casting the card from your graveyard as long as you control a zombie. As fortune would have it, the combo piece that works with them is a zombie. So instead of Warren Soul Trader and Forsaken Miner with Blood Artist, we might have Warren Soul Trader with Gravecrawler, and instead of the Blood Artist, we have Elias Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim. This will work the exact same way. This will not work the same way. You're going to see a live edit here. Whenever another creature enters, you gain 1 life. Whenever another creature you control dies. Nope, this doesn't work. This says each opponent loses 1 life. Alright, you're getting the axe, buddy. Elias is going to the Considering. And we need that Cutthroat. What's that guy called? Zulaport? There we go. I like that better anyway, because now we're at $99.07. We're closer. Makes me feel like we left less money on the table. So yeah, that's the main win line with a little bit of redundancy. Now we have a backup win condition, and we have backup 1-card win assemblers as well. The backup win condition, the main one, is going to be either animate dead or necromancy. And what's nice about having 1 at 2 CMC and 1 at 3 CMC is we've got 1 transmute tutor, Shred Memory, that will find a 2 CMC card, well, like Animate Dead. And we have another Demir Machinations, which will find a 3 CMC card, like Necromancy. I've got a dog barking in the background. Let me see if I can deal with that. I may just have to try to deal with that in post. So hopefully you can't hear the dog bark because I'm an awesome editor. Because it's not going to stop. Anyway, so we've got a 3-mana transmute card. And we have a 2-mana transmute card. And we've got 1 of our animate effects at 2 mana and 1 at 3 mana. Then the thing that we are going to be animating is going to be... Did I turn the timer back on? Or am I recording? Yeah, I was recording. Leonin Relic Warder, which by the way is 2 CMC, so I can find it with the 1 transmute card, but then I do have to find a way to get it in the graveyard. But you can probably tell in this deck that's not going to be a problem. We can cast an Accursed Marauder and sacrifice the Leonin. We can cast we can sacrifice it with Braids. We can sacrifice it with Warren Soul Trader, Plague Crafter, Fleshbag Marauder. So we've got the Diabolic Intent itself. Pretty sure there was another, Deadly Dispute. We can use the Deadly Dispute on it, sack it for value, draw a couple cards, make a treasure. And get our Leonin Relic Warder in the graveyard where we need it. So if we have 1 of our Blood Artist effects in play, and we have our Leonin Relic Warder in the bin, then we need either Animate Dead or Necromancy. We put Animate Dead on Leonin Relic Warder, and Leonin Relic Warder comes back into play because we animated it from the dead, right? When it ETBs, it says you may exile target artifact or enchantment. Well, when we're going through the combo with our Blood Artist or whatever in play, we are going to choose for the Leonin Relic Warder to ETB and exile the Animate Dead that's keeping it alive. So when it comes into play and it exiles the Animate Dead lets go of it and drops it back into the graveyard. Well, when it leaves play, that allows the Animate Dead to return. It comes back into play. When it comes back into play, it's going to be looking for a target. We can reassign whatever target we want, but we're going to still just choose the Leonin Relic Warder. And the Animate Dead is going to go back to the Leonin Relic Warder and animate it again. And when it comes back into play, it's going to exile. Is it exile or phase out? Exile. It's going to exile the animate dead again, which is going to cause it to die again, which is going to bring the animate dead back into play again, which is going to pick it up again, which is going to bring it into play again, which is going to so on and so forth. You are getting infinite ETBs, infinite leave the battlefield, trigger, wow. In this exact variation, in my version of the deck, the only thing this is really going to be is infinite pings off of your Blood Artist or whatever, your Blood Artist or Blood Artist-like effect. So, we've got Blood Artist in play. We've got Leonin Relic Warder in the graveyard. We've got Necromancy or Animate Dead in hand. We are going to be allowed to enter a loop where we are going to put a win on the stack then and there. I want to take a quick look at the land base. I was able to put together a very good land base in Orzhov for $3.03. And look at this. We've got caves of. We've got the Pain Land. We've got Command Tower. This Concealed Courtyard is a fast land. I remember not that long ago these were like $10 a piece. Feta Heath was like $5 until, I thought it was $5 now. Like this just must have got a reprint very recently. Isolated Chapel, Checkland. We've got the Snarl. The Snarls are fine, I think, in 2-color decks. Tainted Field and 2-color decks are fantastic. This will tap for mana whether you control a swamp or not. But if you control a swamp, and you should, we've got 13 basics in the deck. Your Tainted Field will produce black and white mana. Well, black or white mana. It will produce your choice of black or white mana depending on what you need in that moment. So yeah, the land base is really solid. We've got 32 lands. I think that's just about perfect. We're playing a good number of rocks. We've got, Soul Ring, Dark Ritual, so we've got some mana positive stuff. And a pretty good little suite of 2-mana rocks. We are playing a 4-mana commander, so I think the 2-mana rocks are pretty good in here. And we are planning on going into the late game with this deck. Let's talk a little bit about the ways of slowing our opponents down, the attrition pieces, the Stax pieces. Our commander turns Accursed Marauder, Fleshbag Marauder, and Plague Crafter into Stax pieces. Usually I would just count these as removal, but when Accursed Marauder ETBs, each player sacrifices a non-token creature. That includes you, but you can sacrifice the Accursed Marauder. So if you do that, then you're going to be able to cast it, sack it. Everybody has to sacrifice a creature. Then you're going to go to combat with your commander. You're going to attack, and you're going to bring some other thing back into play. And you're going to bring your Accursed Marauder back into play. It's going to ETB, and it's going to die, but it's going to take 3 things out with it. And so really this one card, plus an attack from our commander, is going to murder 6 things. That's a hell of a Stax piece, right? And that's not even all. Like, you could have 2 of these. You could have Accursed Marauder and Plague Crafter, both in your graveyard. And that's just a board wipe every turn. How many board states are going to get to the point where that wouldn't literally wipe the board of all of the creatures that aren't yours every turn, right? You're going to get cast your Accursed Marauder, cast your Plague Crafter. Now that just killed 6 things, and then you go to combat. You biff somebody twice. Both of these guys come back into play, and they kill 6 more things. So you're wiping the board of 12 things. That should pretty well wipe the board. That should clean things up nicely. And that kind of interaction is why I think you could do worse than having cards like Midnight. What is it called? I really was very torn on adding this guy. Midnight. I'm going to pause you and find it. Okay, so there he is. Midnight Reaper. I like this art. This is new. 20 cents. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, this creature deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. So if you're a Accursed Marauder and your Plugcrafter ETB and kill themselves off, even if they only do that once a turn, you're drawing an extra 2 cards every turn for that. Or if you've got your Braids in play and you sacrifice your, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. You've got Braids in play and you sacrifice your Gravecrawler. Maybe you've got Warren Soul Trader in play so you can recast the Gravecrawler. But you cast your Braids, or you sack something off with your Braids, and then you're going to draw a card every turn with Midnight Reaper. Every time you crack and sacrifice your Dauthi Voidwalker, you draw off Midnight Reaper. So this could be a good value engine. I'm going to move this to considering. I don't know what the cut would be for it. I think this all came together so well. Whenever Cruel Celebrant or another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent, nope, we don't want this. Here's my cut. Another cut in real time. You don't see this too often. We're going to move this to considering. And I am going to put that. What about Grim Horror Specs? Is that one better? It's $1. It fucking frickin' better be. Where'd it go? Oh yeah, so this one just doesn't cost you the life. So we're at $99.34. So we might as well put this one in. This one won't cost us any life. Easy swap if we somehow needed to make room for like 30 cents or something. We could get rid of the Grim Horror Specs and bring the Midnight Reaper back in. But yeah, I think this is going to be a better piece than the little Aristocrats pinger. When our things die, yeah, when things dying is triggering things, we'd rather be drawing cards than just pinging. Outside of the combo, obviously. So we crack our Blood Pet for 1 black mana to cast our commander ahead of curve, and we draw a card off of our Grim Horror Specs. Every time we sacrifice our Cathar commander, which we can do to destroy target artifact or enchantment, then we can go to combat and bring it back. But every time we sacrifice a guy like this, we can draw a card with our Grim Horror Spec. So I think that's going to be well worth. Hope of Girper is sort of like a silence effect. It says it's a 1/1 flying kind of evasive dude. Whenever it says sacrifice Hope of Girper until your next turn, target player who is dealt combat damage by Hope of Girper this turn can't cast non-creature spells. So it stays that way all the way until your next turn. So you can use this as a silence effect if you're trying to go off that turn. If you've got the combo pieces assembled and ready to go, and you don't need to attack with your commander, you can attack with the Hope and sacrifice it, draw a card off of your Grim Horror Specs, and now that opponent is not going to be able to interfere. If you've got one blue player with untapped mana, you can use this to silence exactly that one player. And then even if something goes horribly wrong and somebody had a misdirection that was able to stop you or some piece of free interaction, that player is still silenced until your next turn. So that's going to kind of put him out of commission for a while, which can be kind of sketchy sometimes, but for the most part, it's just good. It can be scary, but for the most part, it's good. Most of the time, it's good. It's better than it isn't. Then we've got Final Parting, which is going to act as another version of Buried Alive in a sense. Now, this will not be reliant on our commander. It will, however, be reliant upon us having a Blood Artist effect. So Blood Artist is in play. We cast Final Parting. Or I should say, it's going to depend, it's going to rely on us having one of these pieces in play, or in our hand, or in the graveyard already. The pieces being either Animate Dead or Necromancy, Leonin Relic Warder, and one of the Blood Artists. So if we Final Parting and we have a, I don't know, let's just say we've got the Blood Artist in play, we cast Final Parting, and what we're going to do is we're going to put Animate Dead in our hand, because this says search your library for 2 cards, put one in your hand and the other in your graveyard, then shuffle. We put the Animate Dead in our hand, and we put the Schrodinger's cat, the Relic Warder. The Leonin Relic Warder goes into the graveyard. The animate deck goes to hand. Then we've got our Blood Artist in play, or maybe it's in the graveyard, and we have to go to combat with our commander to bring the Blood Artist back into play. And then we use the 2-for-1 tutor to set up a win, where we go through the animate dead loop that I already explained in pretty good detail. Some of the time we may need to tutor a combo piece directly to hand that we really want in the graveyard. We've got ways to deal with that. We have Collective Brutality. I think cards like this, even cards like Duress, are underplayed, especially in budget. But even just in general, I mean, I think if you're in a low-color black deck, Duress, Thoughtseize, these are perfectly serviceable pieces of interaction. But exactly in budget, when for the most part you can tell who's untapped and who has interaction and who doesn't, being able to Duress your one untapped blue opponent and either see that you're not going to be able to go off and let somebody else run into their counter magic, or strip them of their counter spell and go off, or draw out a counter spell with the Duress or Collective Brutality. All of those things are very good. In this deck, I went with Collective Brutality because if we draw a piece that we would rather have in the graveyard, Collective Brutality gives us a way to put it there for value. So we can, let's read the card. 2 mana, black and 1, sorcery. It has the ability Escalate, which means you can discard a card to select extra modes. But it says choose one or more. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an instant or sorcery from it. That player discards that card. So you can get your opponent's counterspells with that. If you have your whatever piece you want in the bin, Leonin Relic Warder usually, you can discard the Leonin Relic Warder to turbocharge your Collective Brutality. Now you can choose another mode, like target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. You see a Dark Confidant sitting across the table from you, or a Lotho, or a Dauthi, and you don't want other people to have your cool toys, so you decide to murk their cool toys. Also, with the fact that we've got ways to recur our things easily, it's often not going to be any trouble at all for us to discard to get that Collective Brutality working at full power. So let's just say we've got like Blood Pet in hand. We've got Leonin Relic Warder in hand. We've got Collective Brutality. We can cast Collective Brutality, and we can discard both of those cards. Then we can choose all 3 modes. So one target opponent reveals their hands, you pitch a counterspell. Then you neg 2 somebody else's Bloom Tender or Luris, or whatever, some nasty threat. You don't want them to have their Magda or their Kinnan or their Malcolm. You can murk. Then you can choose another player to lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. That's probably not going to come up all that often. It's the other 2 modes mostly. But I mean, if it's free, if it's basically free, you might as well do it. And what do I mean by free? I mean, if you don't have anything else you want to recur and you've got a creature card in your hand, or you've got a card that you don't mind discarding because you're just going to go to combat, attack, and double proc your Squall to bring back 2 pieces, then you might as well discard. Maybe you want to discard your Soul Guide Lantern. You don't have a good use for it right now. And then you go to combat and you hit somebody with your double striking commander, and you bring the Soul Guide Lantern and whatever else you want back into play. Soul Guide Lantern, when it ETBs, you can exile a card from a graveyard. You can tap this and sacrifice it and exile each opponent's graveyard. That's nasty. That's not each player. It's not one opponent, it's each opponent's graveyard, and you could do that every turn with your commander. And have like a whole other activation of your commander left every turn. So you can whack every graveyard that isn't yours. Or you can simply, in the late game, you can bring this into play with your commander. You can pay 1 mana to sacrifice the Lantern, draw a card. Maybe you've got Mind Stone and Soul Guide Lantern, and just your commander is just basically going to pick up the text that says, pay 2 mana, draw 2 cards. So every combat, you'll get to hit somebody for 6, double strike 3, ping ping, and bring the Soul Guide Lantern out along with the Mind Stone. Crack 1 for a mana, draw a card, crack another for a mana, draw a card. And almost worst case scenario, you'll be able to do that every turn. You know, for a mana investment of 1 mana per card drawn. That's pretty good. You know, it's actually really good. And that's kind of like the worst case scenario, or one of them. That's damn near the floor. Something closer to the ceiling might be Aura of... Well, this is still not... The ceiling is win the game. But maybe Grasp of Fate and Aura of Silence. Or Seal of Cleansing and Seal of Doom every turn. Or Wishclaw Talisman. You can tutor with your Wishclaw, and then you can either blow it up with one of your removal spells, or specifically you can use Deadly Dispute to sacrifice your Wishclaw Talisman and draw 2 cards, make a treasure, put the Wishclaw back in your graveyard, and then go to combat, bring the Wishclaw back, and now you've maybe been able to tutor twice in that same turn off the 1 Wishclaw Talisman without even having to give it to an opponent yet. And usually if you can tutor twice in competitive, if you've built your deck well, if you can tutor twice and you've got mana, you can win the game. Vexing Bauble. This card is not as good in low budget. I was going to say low power. These decks are not low power. Vexing Bauble is not as good here as it is in CDH, but 1 mana, again, worst case scenario, if it's not helping you, you can pay 1 mana, sacrifice Vexing Bauble to draw a card. So it's just another piece like Soul Guide Lantern, like Mind Stone, that has some other uses that are legitimate uses, but they can also turn into card draw for your commander just to power it up when you need. We've also got not ways to actually sacrifice creatures, but we've got a Skull Clamp that will murder our creatures. So Skull Clamp is a nasty value engine. In this deck, it's going to be freaking crazy. I mean, it's going to be lit, right? Like you have Dark Confidant. You had it in play. You go to your turn. You draw an extra card off your Dark Confidant. Then you clamp it. And you Skull Clamp the Dark Confidant. You draw 2 more cards. And then you go to combat. And you bring the Dark Confidant right back into play, along with some other value piece, or along with some other protection piece like Skrelv, or a combo piece, value engine combo piece, Stax piece. We really didn't talk too much about the Stax pieces. So the creature stacks are going to be your Fleshbag Marauder, Accursed Marauder, and Plaguecrafter. Then you're going to have and maybe Skyclave Apparition. Shit, there's lots. Also, Seal of Doom. You can do this every turn. Sacrifice it to destroy target non-black creature. That creature cannot regenerate. Grasp of Fate. You can do this every turn if you have a way to sacrifice it, or you can blow it up with your own Aura of Silence, or you can just use the Aura of Silence. Aura of Silence. Aura of Silence is a nasty stacks piece. Artifacts and enchantments that your opponents play cost 2 more. And you can sacrifice Aura of Silence to destroy target artifact or enchantment. You can do that every turn. Static Prison. It exiles target non-land permanent. It's any non-land permanent until this thing leaves the battlefield. And even if you don't want to sacrifice it to some effect, it will sacrifice itself eventually because you'll run out of energy for it. And then when it does, you can choose whether you want to use that as one of the 2 things you get to bring back every turn or not. You're going to have some toolboxy. The deck is going to have a toolboxy feel to it in a lot of ways. Charitable Levy is like made for this deck. 2 mana, enchantment, non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, put a levy counter on it. If there are 3 or more levy counters on it, sacrifice it. If you do, draw a card, then search your library for a plains, put that onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And every time you get to that point, you can recur it with your commander. Or you can use some other effect, like say Braids, to get rid of it, and then get that effect again. We've got, let me see how we're doing on time. Oh boy, shit, I want to do gold fishing. I might do a second video for this one. It plays out so nasty. I mean, you kind of have to, okay. Archon of Emeria, Stax pieces. Stay focused on them. Navanat. Aven Interrupter. When it enters the battlefield, exile target spell, it becomes plotted. So this is kind of like a flash, flying counterspell in a way. Spells your opponents cast from graveyards or exile cost 2 more to cast. So this is also going to stop your opponents or slow them way down if they're trying to do stormy, breachy type things. A lot of graveyard-based stuff is going to get shut off or basically shut off with Aven Interrupter. Your Archon of Emeria will stop your opponents from doing combos, and then if you're ready to combo off, you have combos that can play through Archon of Emeria. And you have ways to sacrifice Archon of Emeria so you can get it off of the battlefield when you're ready to go off. If you even need to. Some of the combos you don't need to. Hope of Girper turns into a Stax effect when you use it every turn. Stax effect. Same with Cathar Commando. Aven Mindsensor just is a really nasty Stax piece. Dauthi Voidwalker cuts your opponents off from their graveyards. It says if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead with a void counter on it. Then you can tap and sacrifice this guy, and you can choose anything with a void counter on it, and you can cast it without paying its mana cost. So you can get them to discard a Peer into the Abyss, and then you can crack your Dauthi Voidwalker and cast that 7 mana spell for 0 mana. And then you can just recur this guy that same turn, so you're up and ready to do it again next turn. You can also use this to cast other players' counter spells. So this ends up being kind of like a counter spell in the deck. Or it's a Stax piece, it's a counter spell, it's a value piece. It slices, it dices, it juliens. Braids ends up working like a Stax piece. Bounty Agent. Look, all of your opponents have legendary things. There's a lot more legendary creatures in decks than there were 2-3 years ago. And everybody has one in their command zone. So being able to sacrifice this thing to destroy a legendary permanent, it doesn't say legendary creature. Any legendary permanent that's an artifact, creature, or enchantment. You can blow up with the Bounty Agent, and you can do that every turn. And it doesn't even cost you much in opportunity because you get to do 2 things every turn. So this is pretty much the deck. Lotho's a value engine. Dauntless Dismantler. Your opponent's artifacts, ETB, tapped. And you can blow stuff up with the double X and 1 sack ability. So not only is this a Stax piece, it's a little bit like a Blind Obedience that stays in play and has an a passive ability, but it also has an activated ability which sacrifices it, which means you can recur it with your commander's ability. Skrelv will help your guy get through unblocked and just protect it. Then you've got a pretty nice suite of interaction. Fracture, Vanishing Verse. These are really good high-impact removal pieces. Path to Exile. Swords to Plowshare. Imp's Mischief, one of my favorite cards of all time. This is a black counterspeller. It counters target counterspeller. It redirects target spell. Like the vast majority of the time, this is going to be indistinguishable from just black, colorless counter target spell. Maybe even a little bit better than that. I think it's better than that, actually. Well, it's different, but a lot of times it's going to be better than that. You've got Lively Dirge, which can just be a tutor straight to the battlefield. If you've got all of your other pieces ready to go, the only thing you need is your Warren Soul Trader, and it's somewhere in your deck. You can cast your Lively Dirge, and it's going to effectively become a Finale of Devastation in that situation. So it's 2 mana, plus you can spree it for +1 and or +2. So if we have our Warren Soul Trader somewhere in our library, then we can pay the full 5 mana to pay both spree. One spree says search your library for a card. That's going to be our Warren Soul Trader. Put it in your graveyard and shuffle. The +2 spree says return up to 2 creature cards with total mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you can pay the 5 mana, dig your Warren Soul Trader out of your deck directly into play. Or sometimes you're going to have your Warren Soul Trader, but you're going to have like your Blood Artist in the graveyard along with your will that work? Yeah. So you can have your if you have Lively Dirge in hand, maybe you've already got your Warren Soul Trader, but you've got your Blood Artist, or your Blood Artist and your Forsaken Miner, or your Blood Artist and your Forsaken Miner, or your what's the other Grave Crawler instead of Forsaken Miner. And instead of Blood Artist, maybe you've got your Zulaport Cutthroat. So you can cast the Lively Dirge just for the 2 mana it costs and its 2 mana spree. So for 4 mana, you can regrow both of those pieces directly into play. Maybe you buried one of them with Unmarked Grave. Maybe one of them died. Maybe you sacked one for value. We've got Savine's Reclamation in the deck because it just kind of goes along with everything we're doing. Although I honestly could see cutting this piece, since that's almost exactly what your commander does anyway. But I don't know, a little extra redundancy, and maybe sometimes your commander will be dealt with and you'll need this to actually get to one of your lines. That's the deck, guys. Thalia. Thalia's a damning Stax piece. So everything is Stax. Everything is Stax, value, attrition, interaction. And the way the deck works and the commander works, it gets kind of hard to draw clean boundaries between what counts as interaction, what counts as Stax, what counts as value. It's all kind of just weaving together into an amorphous blob of highly discounted sellswords that go by the name of Squall SeeD, and D is for discount, V is for vendetta, D is for discount, N is for Navinad, and this is Navinad. Word to your mothers, word to your brothers, word to your sisters. I hope you enjoyed the video on the east side, not on the west side, because I'm going to die on the west side, but not until I live on the east side until I die. Namaste. We're going to cut it off before we get to 60 minutes. Peace be with you, and also with you. Not you, fuck you. But not, no, I didn't mean that to you. Word to your mothers, homie. Namaste, nerds. Peace.